If you've seen some of my recent videos, then you may know that I've been working on the PortSwigger Web Security Academy recently, and I've been trying to get through all of the apprentice level labs so I can finally get that newbie tag off of my profile. If you don't know, on the PortSwigger Web Security Academy, there are different categories of each different lab you can solve, and in order to reach apprentice level on your account, you have to complete all of the apprentice level labs, and there are 58 of them. As you can see, I've solved 56 of the 58 total apprentice labs, and it says I need to solve 2 more in order to become an apprentice. The first lab I need to complete is under the OAuth authentication section, and the lab is titled Authentication Bypass via OAuth Implicit Flow. I actually see OAuth a pretty good bit during my day job, and I haven't actually talked about it any on this channel yet, so I thought it was a pretty good topic for a video anyway, and it just worked out that it's one of the last labs I needed to complete. And the second lab that I'm going to do in the second half of this video is under the File Upload Vulnerabilities category, and this is a Webshell upload via content type restriction bypass. I actually thought this was a pretty cool lab to be the last one to get my newbie tag off of my profile, because I just think uploading web shells is always fun, so that will be my second lab I do in this video. But first, let's get started on the authentication bypass via OAuth implicit flow. The instructions say, this lab uses an OAuth service to allow users to log in with their social media account. Flawed validation by the client application makes it possible for an attacker to log in to other users' accounts without knowing their password. To solve the lab, log into Carlos's account, and it gives us his email address, and it also gives us credentials that we can use to log into our own social media account. So as usual, I'm going to access the lab in a new tab, and I'm also going to launch Burp Suite. And once both those launch, I'm going to open up a browser inside Burp Suite, and I'm going to paste the URL to that lab address into the browser inside Burp Suite. So now that I'm getting traffic in my HTTP history, now I can start messing with the lab. And since this lab is about the OAuth flow, I'm going to go ahead and go to my account and try to log in with my own credentials. So this is a pretty common thing you see on a lot of websites, where instead of creating an account on that website that'll offer something with like Google authentication or use your Facebook account or anything like that in order to authenticate instead of creating a whole new account. So I'm just going to log in with the credentials they gave me, and I'm going to hit continue to authorize, and now I'm logged in. So now we can go back and take a look at that workflow to see if we can see anything that we might be able to mess with. A get to OAuth callback, then this GET request that returns my name and my email address, and then the post request to authenticate. And this posts my email address, my name, and a token. That might be useful. The fact that it sends an email address in this post request, that could be something we can mess with. Remember back in the instructions, they gave us the email address to the account that we're trying to access. We don't have the username and password to their social media account, so we can't access that, but we do have their email address. And this post request is actually sending an email address in the parameters. And this is going directly to the endpoint of our website that we're trying to access, and not that OAuth endpoint going through that social media account. It looks like it's actually getting the user information, including the email address, from this GET request to the OAuth endpoint, and then it's using that information to submit this post request with the email address, the username, and this token. So I'm not 100% sure if this will work because I don't have Carlos's username, though I can probably guess that it's probably just Carlos. And I also don't have a token, but I'm going to try sending this request to repeater, and I'm going to replace this email address with Carlos's email address, and I'm going to just send that and see if that actually gets me what I want. Follow redirection, no errors yet, that's good. So I didn't get any errors there, but I'm actually not 100% sure if I'm logged in as Carlos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this request, and I'm going to right click it and say request in browser, and I'm going to open that in the browser, and congratulations, you solved the lab. So if I go to my account, I am logged in as Carlos. So it turns out they weren't actually doing any sort of verification on that username parameter or the token parameter. So that's some additional security that they could have provided to prevent us from accessing someone else's account just by doing some sort of verification like on that token, or maybe the token and the username. But there are several different ways they could have changed this workflow to make it where just providing this email address wouldn't access someone else's account. But that lab is now complete. I am only one lab away from no longer being a newbie. And the one apprentice lab I have left is Webshell upload via content type restriction bypass. They really have great catchy titles for these labs, don't they? The instructions for this one says, this lab contains a vulnerable image upload function. It attempts to prevent users from uploading unexpected file types, but relies on checking user-controlled input to verify this. To solve the lab, upload a basic PHP web shell and use it to exfiltrate the contents of the file /home/carlos/secret. Submit this secret using the button provided in the lab banner. You can log in to your own account using these credentials. Okay, so once again, access the lab, and once it finishes loading, I paste that address into the browser inside Burp Suite. And since they gave us credentials, I'm going to go ahead and log in with those credentials now. Like the instructions said, there is an image upload functionality, and our goal is to use this to upload a PHP web shell. Now, there are all kinds of PHP web shells out there you can find. If you just search on GitHub, you can probably find a ton. For example, here's this easy, simple PHP web shell from a guy named Josh Wright, who, by the way, I actually took a class from several years ago. He's a great instructor. And for a lot of cases, something like this would actually be great for whatever you're wanting to do with a web shell. But because we have such a specific use case that the only thing we need to do is get the contents of home/carlos/secret, we can just make a super focused, tailored PHP web shell that only does that. We can do this just with whatever your preferred text editor is. I'm going to use Vim, and I'm going to call it webshell.php. And the file we need to access is /home/carlos/secret. And we need to get the contents of that file. And we want to echo whatever is returned by the contents from that file. So there we go. That's all we need for our little simple PHP web shell. And now if we go back to this file upload function, we can choose file, and then we select our webshell.php, upload. Sorry, that file type is not allowed. Only image JPEG and image PNG are allowed. Sorry, there was an error uploading your file. Okay, so now we need to figure out how to get around that. So if we look back in Burp Suite, we can look at this workflow and we see that here we have this post request to /myaccount/avatar. So that post request is where we're actually uploading the contents of that file. And if we look in the body of that post, we actually see that the contents of our web shell is actually reflected in that body. And we see that the content type is application/xphp. So let's see if we can just change that content type in our request and then resubmit it. So if we try to resend that request again, just like we had it before, we see that error message that says only JPEGs and PNGs are allowed. So instead of having this application/php under the content type, let's try to make it an image/PNG and try to resend that and see what happens. The file avatar's webshell.php has been uploaded. So instead of doing any sort of verification on the extension of the file name or the actual contents of the file itself, it didn't do anything like that to verify what kind of file it is. It just took at face value that what we tell it is the content type is the actual content type and accepted it. So now when we reload this page, we should see that we have an avatar uploaded, and it is not actually loading because it's not a real picture, it's a PHP file. And when we look at the traffic in Burp Suite, we see that we have a GET request to this PHP file, and that's it trying to load that avatar that we uploaded. And we see in the response, it actually returned the contents of that /home/carlos/secret file when it executed that PHP file that we uploaded. So we can just copy that, go back to the lab, click the Submit Solution button, paste that string in there, click OK. And congratulations, you solved the lab. And I believe that is the last Apprentice lab that I needed to solve. So if I go back to my dashboard, I am now officially an Apprentice according to PortSwigger Web Security Academy. But now I have to solve 149 more labs to become a practitioner. Anyway, I solved my goal. I accomplished something in this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Maybe some of those labs were useful for you. If there are any more practitioner or expert level labs in the Web Security Academy you want me to go over, let me know and I will try to get to them. And if you missed any of the other Apprentice labs that I already solved and made videos for, you can check out this playlist right here.